Welcome to Lunarwhisper. I'll be your storyteller tonight, the voice you hear when the room gets too quiet. Before we begin, like this video and subscribe, so you never miss the things that follow you after midnight. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is, and if there's a story you want next, don't be shy. The shadows are listening. My name is Lyra, and honestly, I never thought I would tell anyone about what happened last year. It still makes my hands shake just thinking about it. I used to believe strange things only happened in movies, not in real life, and definitely not to someone as ordinary as me. But everything changed the night my cousin Erin came to stay at my house for a few days. Erin had this habit of recording everything with her phone. She said she liked collecting small moments, even when nothing special was happening. That night she placed her phone on the table, pointing at both of us while we were chatting. We talked about school, our parents, and random things. Nothing strange at all, but when she checked the recording a few minutes later, her face suddenly turned pale. She didn't say anything. She just handed the phone to me, with her hand shaking a little. I thought she was joking, so I laughed, but she looked too serious. When I looked at the screen, I felt my whole body freeze. In the video, Erin and I were sitting together. But there was something else behind us. It wasn't moving, but it was there. A dark figure standing in the corner of my room. My room looked normal. The same lights, same furniture, but that figure wasn't something I had ever seen before. It was just standing there, facing our direction. Erin asked if I had noticed anything before, maybe a shadow or someone passing by. I shook my head. The room had been silent and calm the whole time. We played the video again, hoping it was just a glitch or maybe a reflection. But the figure appeared every time, in the same spot, as if it had been quietly watching us. Erin wanted to leave the room, and honestly, so did I. But for some reason, I felt something inside me saying we shouldn't move so fast. It was like the room had suddenly become heavier, and the air felt colder. I didn't know why, but I felt that if we opened the door too quickly, something worse would happen. Before we could decide anything, Erin's phone screen turned black by itself. And then, for a second, it lit up again with the front camera open. Except this time the figure wasn't in the corner anymore. It was right behind us. Erin dropped her phone the moment we saw the image. It hit the floor, but neither of us picked it up. We were too afraid to look away from each other. I could feel my heartbeat pushing against my chest, and Erin kept swallowing like her throat was dry. We didn't dare turn around. We didn't want to know if the figure from the video was really behind us, or if it was just something the camera showed. Erin whispered that maybe we should run out of the room, but my legs felt weak, like they wouldn't hold me. I told her to wait a moment, to breathe, but even my own voice sounded unsure. Then something strange happened. The house, which had always been full of small noises, fans, the fridge, cars outside, suddenly felt too quiet. It was the kind of silence that made your ears ring. Erin grabbed my arm tightly, and I held her back. I finally forced myself to look at the door. If we could reach it, we could run to the living room where it felt safer. But as I stared at the door, I realized something that made my stomach twist. The door wasn't fully closed anymore. We had closed it earlier, I was sure of that. But now it was open just a little, like someone had pushed it from outside. Erin whispered my name carefully, as if she didn't want to disturb anything around us. She said we should count to 3 and run together. I nodded even though my whole body felt cold. We counted in our heads. 1, 2, 3. We ran to the door as fast as we could, but when we reached it, something made both of us stop, something we couldn't explain. The hallway outside was completely dark, not the normal kind of dark. It was deeper, almost like the hallway wasn't there anymore. Just a long, empty space that looked wrong. I felt like if we stepped into it, we wouldn't know where we would end up. Erin started crying quietly. She said she felt something watching us from inside the darkness. Something waiting for us to make a move. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt it too. A quiet pressure, like eyes following our every breath. Then we heard the phone behind us vibrate on the floor. But we hadn't received any messages. Erin grabbed my hand again. She told me not to look back, but I could already feel it. The same cold feeling from the video. Something else was now in the room with us. We stood there, both of us shaking, not knowing whether to run forward into the dark hallway or stay inside the room with something we couldn't see. I kept telling myself that maybe we were imagining things, that fear was tricking our minds. But the vibration from the phone continued, steady and slow, like someone was holding it. Aaron whispered that we had to check the phone just to know what was happening. I didn't want to, but leaving it there felt worse. We moved together, step by step, until we reached it. Aaron picked it up carefully, her fingers trembling. The screen was lit, but there were no notifications. Instead, it was recording again. Except this time it wasn't showing us. It was showing the corner of the room, the same corner where we had seen the figure earlier. The screen was clear. Nothing was there now. No figure, no shadow, just an empty wall. And then slowly, very slowly, something began to appear. Not by moving into the frame, but by forming itself, like it was growing out of the darkness. A shape that didn't match any human I had ever seen. The longer we stared at the screen, the more clear its outline became. Erin covered her mouth, trying not to scream. I felt my head getting lighter, almost dizzy, but I couldn't look away. The thing was taking shape, like it had been waiting for us to watch. Then the figure did something it hadn't done before. It looked straight into a camera, and the moment it did, the lights in the room flickered slightly. Not enough to go out, but enough to make our hearts jump. Erin's phone turned hot in her hand, so hot, she dropped it again. When it hit the floor this time, the screen cracked and went black. We didn't think anymore. We just reacted. We ran to the hallway, to the living room, anywhere that felt safer. The hallway was still dark, but now we didn't care. We just moved. Once we reached the living room, the lights there were still on. We stood close together, breathing hard, checking behind us again and again. We didn't go back to my room that night. In fact, we didn't go back the next day either. When my parents came home, they said nothing was wrong with the room. They thought we were overreacting. But Irene and I knew what we saw. We knew the figure wasn't just some shadow or trick. It had watched us. It had moved closer. And the worst part is, sometimes late at night my phone screen lights up on its own, always showing the corner of my room, even when I'm not recording anything. I never thought a simple challenge from my friends would turn into something that still follows me today. It all started on a quiet evening, when we were hanging out at my place, just talking about random things. Someone mentioned an online story about a mirror that could show something not from this world, if you stared at your own reflection long enough. Honestly, I wasn't scared at all. It sounded like a childish rumor, but my friend insisted we try it. He said, "Just look into the mirror for 5 minutes without looking away. If nothing happens, we can laugh about it." I didn't want to be the one who looked scared, so I agreed. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. The room felt normal, just like any other night. I stared at myself, trying not to blink too much. At first, everything felt boring and a little silly. I even smiled at my own reflection because I thought this whole thing was pointless. But around the 3rd minute, something felt strange. It wasn't something I saw, but something I felt. The air seemed heavier, as if someone else was in the room with me. I told myself I was just imagining things. I kept looking at my reflection anyway, trying to stay calm. Then slowly, something changed. My reflection didn't move differently, but the eyes didn't look like mine anymore. They looked a bit deeper, a bit darker, almost like they were thinking something I wasn't thinking. It was still my face, but it didn't feel like me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My reflection looked like it was waiting for me to do something, but I had no idea what. And right when I felt a cold feeling run down my back, my reflection smiled first, before I did. I froze the moment my reflection smiled on its own. It wasn't a big smile, just a small one, but it was enough to make my whole body feel weak. I stepped back a little, but my eyes stayed locked on the mirror. I kept hoping I was just imagining it, that maybe my eyes were tired or the light was playing tricks on me. But the reflection didn't stop. It kept smiling, slowly widening its grin, like it was enjoying how confused I was. What scared me the most was that my real face stayed completely still. I wasn't smiling at all. I called out to my friends, but no sound came out at first. It felt like my voice got stuck somewhere in my throat. I tried again, louder this time, and finally shouted their names. They rushed to the bathroom, but when they arrived, the reflection suddenly went back to normal. It copied me again, exactly like a normal mirror should. My friends looked at me like I was overreacting. They laughed a little and said I probably scared myself. I wanted to believe them, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. I didn't want to try the challenge again, and I told them I was done. For the rest of the night, everything felt strange. Every shiny surface caught my attention. Every time I walked past a window or a glass door, I felt like the reflection inside it was following me a little too closely. I didn't want to look, but sometimes I caught a glimpse of myself when I wasn't trying to, and in one of those moments when I passed by the dark window in my living room, I saw something that made my heart feel like it stopped. My reflection wasn't facing the same direction as me. It stood still, looking straight at me, even though I was walking away. I backed away from the window as fast as I could. I didn't want to look again, but something inside me forced my eyes toward the glass. My reflection was still staring straight at me. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. I turned on every light in the house, hoping it would make me feel safer, but it didn't help at all. The reflections were still there in every glass surface, and every time I saw them, they seemed a little different. Sometimes the reflection stood a bit too straight. Sometimes the face looked slightly older. Sometimes the eyes looked like they were following me before my head even turned. I decided to cover every mirror and window I could find. I didn't care how ridiculous it looked. I used blankets, paper, anything I could hold. I just wanted everything reflective to disappear. For a moment, the house felt quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard something from my bedroom. It sounded like someone gently tapping on the mirror I had covered earlier. My whole body felt cold. I didn't want to check, but I also knew I couldn't ignore it. When I finally walked to the room and slowly lifted the blanket covering the mirror, I felt my stomach drop. There was no reflection at all, not even my own, just a dark, empty space, as if the mirror didn't lead to my room anymore. I slowly leaned closer, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then, out of the darkness inside that mirror, a hand pressed against the other side of the glass. It looked exactly like mine, but the skin was pale and the fingers were longer than they should be. Before I could move, I saw a face appear behind that hand. It was my face, but twisted, like someone had tried to copy me and got every detail slightly wrong. It smiled, the same smile I saw earlier, the one that didn't belong to me. And then, in a voice that sounded almost like mine, but not quite, it whispered something I will never forget. "I've been waiting for you to look away." The blanket fell from my hand, and when I blinked, my real reflection finally returned. But ever since that night, I refused to stare too long into any mirror. Because sometimes when I make the mistake of looking too closely, my reflection still smiles before I do. The story begins with a young woman named Lyra. She had just moved into a small rented house at the edge of the town, hoping for a quieter life after leaving her stressful job. The house looked simple from the outside, nothing special, but there was something about it that felt slightly unusual. Still, Lyra ignored it because she was too tired to think much. On her first night, she noticed the house felt colder than it should. Not the normal type of cold, but a cold that made her feel like someone was standing too close behind her. Every time she turned around, she saw nothing. She kept telling herself it was just her mind trying to adjust to a new place. When she tried to sleep, she kept waking up every hour without knowing why. Her room was quiet, the hallway was dark, and nothing seemed out of place. But each time she opened her eyes, she felt like the darkness around her was heavier, almost as if it was watching her. The next morning, she found something strange on her dining table. Her own notebook was open, even though she clearly remembered keeping it inside her bag the night before. A single sentence was written on the page in messy handwriting she had never seen before. "Why are you here?" Lyra froze. She lived alone. No one had a key. The windows were locked. She tried to calm herself, thinking maybe she accidentally wrote it during half-sleep even though she knew she didn't. But the feeling of being watched never left her, especially whenever she sat alone in the living room, She always sensed someone standing in the hallway, hidden behind the shadows, waiting for her to notice. That night, things became worse. When she turned off the lights and got into bed, she felt the mattress sink slightly beside her, as if someone had sat down. Her body stiffened, and she didn't dare move. She knew she was alone, but her skin felt tight, her breath held itself, and her mind whispered that something else was in the room. She didn't look. She couldn't. But she felt it leaning closer. And then, slowly, the unseen presence whispered in the darkness, very close to her ear. "I asked you. Why are you here?" Lyra couldn't breathe. She wanted to scream, but her voice wouldn't come out, and she finally understood. This house wasn't empty when she moved in. Lyra jumped out of the bed and turned on the lights as fast as she could. Her hands were shaking, and her heart felt like it was trying to escape her chest. But when the room lit up, there was no one there. The space beside her on the mattress looked normal, as if nothing had touched it. She spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor with the lights on, too afraid to lie down again. The next morning, she decided to call the owner of the house to ask if something had happened there before, but the number she had been given didn't connect. It kept saying the number was not available. She checked the contract, and the name seemed strangely faded, like the ink had been rubbed off slowly over time. Only the address was clear. Trying to shake away the fear, she stepped into the living room. That was when she noticed something even more disturbing. Her notebook was open again on the table. But this time, instead of one sentence, there were 3 lines written in the same messy handwriting. "You should leave. You don't belong here. It doesn't like you." Lyra didn't understand what "it" meant, and she didn't want to find out. She decided she would pack her things and leave that evening. She didn't care about the deposit or anything else. But as she began to put her clothes into her suitcase, she heard a soft, dragging sound from the hallway. Slow, heavy, like something pulling itself across the floor. She wanted to believe she imagined it, but the sound continued. She stepped out of her room and looked down the hallway. Nothing was there, but the air felt tight and colder than before. She moved slowly, trying to reach her front door. But then the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice. Then they dimmed into a low, dull glow, and at the end of the hallway she saw something. A figure. Not standing, not moving, but crouching low to the ground as if it had been waiting. She could not see its face. She could not see its body clearly. But she knew, every part of her knew, that the figure was looking straight at her. Lyra stepped back, trying not to make a sound, but the figure slowly tilted its head to the side, almost curious, almost ready. Then, without warning, it crawled forward toward her. Its movements slow but controlled, as if it had all the time in the world. Lyra ran into her room and slammed the door shut. She pressed herself against it, praying it wouldn't come closer. But the crawling sound stopped right outside her door. And then a quiet voice spoke from the other side. "You can't leave now." Lyra held the doorknob tightly, afraid it would turn on its own. Her breathing became unsteady, and she could hear her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She didn't know what the thing outside wanted, but she understood one thing clearly: she was trapped. After a few minutes of silence, she slowly stepped away from the door. She needed to find another way out. The window in her room seemed like the only option. She pushed the curtains aside and unlocked the window quickly. But when she tried lifting it, it didn't move at all. It felt almost sealed, like something was holding it shut from the outside. Her chest tightened with panic. She turned back toward the door. The doorknob was moving, not fast, very slow, as if the thing outside was testing how frightened she was. Lyra looked around her room desperately. Her eyes stopped on the mirror hanging beside the bed. At first it only showed her reflection. Pale face, shaky body. But then she noticed something behind her reflection. A shadow, standing right behind her. She spun around, but the room was empty. When she looked back at the mirror again, the shadow was clearer now, taller, closer. She backed away from it, but the reflection showed the shadow moving toward her, even though the room still looked empty to her eyes. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "What do you want from me?" The shadow in the mirror lifted what looked like an arm and pointed at her notebook on the table. With shaking hands, she picked it up. The pages flipped on their own until they stopped at a fresh page. New handwriting appeared slowly, as if an invisible hand was writing in real time. "You stayed." The next line appeared. "Now you belong here." Lyra dropped the notebook and ran to the door, no longer caring what waited outside. But when she pulled the door open, the hallway was gone. Instead, there was only darkness, a deep, endless darkness that felt like it was stretching forever. She stepped back, but the floor under her feet shifted like soft ground. She looked down and realized the wooden floor was changing into something darker, something that looked like a shadow spreading under her. The shadow rose like a hand reaching out and wrapped around her ankle. Lyra tried to scream, but the room swallowed her voice. The shadow pulled her down, and the last thing she saw was her mirror reflection. Her own face, but with a different expression, almost like someone else was smiling through her. Then everything went silent. The next morning, the house looked empty again. Quiet. Still. The notebook remained on the table. A new sentence was written on the last page. "Who is next?" I never planned to get involved in anything strange. Honestly, my life was simple. I worked, went home, and tried to sleep early. But everything changed the night I received a message from an unknown number. It only said one sentence. "Do you still live alone?" I felt confused because I never shared my number with many people. I ignored it at first, thinking maybe it was a wrong number, but a few minutes later, another message came. "I can see your window." I froze. My room only had one window and it faced the empty lot behind my house. That place had been abandoned for years. I slowly turned my head toward the window. The curtains were closed, but I swear I felt like someone was standing on the other side, watching me. My heartbeat felt louder than usual. I tried to stay calm and replied, "Who is this?" No answer. I stood up and took a small step closer to the window, trying to listen. The whole room felt colder, even though the night wasn't supposed to be cold. Then my phone vibrated again. "Don't open the curtain. You won't like what you see." I stepped back immediately. At that moment, I realized something was wrong. Very wrong. The messages didn't feel like a prank. They felt personal, like whoever sent them knew exactly where I was standing and what I was doing. I wanted to call someone, but for some reason my hands felt weak. My mind kept imagining someone standing right outside that window, waiting. And then, the last message came, short but enough to make me feel sick. "You weren't supposed to see me last week." I had no memory of seeing anything or anyone strange last week, but the message made me question everything. What did I actually see? And why did this person think I noticed them? Before I could think more, I heard a soft tap on the glass. Just one, like a reminder that I wasn't alone. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe for a second. The tap on the glass was so gentle that I could almost pretend it didn't happen. But deep down, I knew it was real. My room felt smaller, like the walls were inching closer. I slowly stepped backward until I reached my bedroom door. My eyes stayed locked on the window, even though I still couldn't see anything through the curtains. I wanted to run out of the house, but something in me refused to turn my back to that window. It felt dangerous, like if I looked away, something would slip inside. My phone vibrated again. "Why did you move away from the window?" My chest tightened. They could see me. Right now, inside my own room. I typed with shaky hands. "Who are you? What do you want?" A full minute passed with no reply. I kept staring at the curtains, trying to see a shadow or movement. The silence made everything worse. Then another message. "You saw me behind your house last week. You looked at me for 3 seconds. That was enough. I've been waiting since then." I tried to think back. Last week, I did remember hearing something when I took out the trash at night. A soft rustling behind the old storage shed. I thought it was just a stray cat. I didn't look carefully. I didn't even think about it again. Could that be what they meant? I took a deep breath and forced myself to grip the doorknob, ready to run to the living room. But then, another tap, this time a little stronger. I felt my whole body tense. I whispered to myself, "Don't look. Don't open the curtain." But my curiosity kept pulling at me. My mind kept imagining a face pressed against the glass, waiting for me to make a mistake. Another message came. "If you open the curtain now, it will be easier." I shook my head. I didn't understand what easier meant, but I knew it wasn't good. I texted back, "Stop, please." For a moment, the tapping stopped. The room became painfully quiet. I thought maybe the person had left. Maybe they were just trying to scare me. Then my phone buzzed once more, and this time the message was different. "I'm not outside anymore." My whole body went cold. I stared at the message, hoping I misunderstood it. But there was no other meaning. If they weren't outside anymore, then they were inside the house. I gripped the doorframe and tried to listen. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like someone was standing just out of sight, waiting for me to make a sound. I slowly stepped into the hallway, trying not to alert whoever might be there. My phone vibrated again. "You walked past me." I froze mid-step. I hadn't seen anyone. I hadn't heard anything. But if what the message said was true, then I had just walked past something I couldn't see. I tried to calm my breathing as I looked around. The hallway lights flickered slightly, like they were struggling to stay on. I forced myself to whisper, "What do you want from me?" A few seconds later, the answer came. "You saw me once. Now you must see me again." I didn't understand. I didn't want to understand. I took another step backward, toward my room, thinking of locking myself inside until morning. But something made me stop. A faint sound came from behind me. Not from the window this time, from the corner of the hallway. It sounded like someone breathing, slow, steady, almost relaxed. I couldn't see anything there, but the sound kept going. I felt my skin tighten as I turned my head just a little, just enough to glance at the corner. There was nothing, but the breathing continued. My phone buzzed one last time. "When you finally see me, it will already be too late." At that moment, the breathing stopped. The lights went completely still. And in the quiet that followed, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't supposed to hear the breathing at all. It meant they were closer than I thought. Much closer. And then, without warning, I felt a warm breath on the back of my neck, even though I was standing, completely alone. Ronnie never believed that an ordinary house could hide something terrifying. She always thought horror stories were just exaggerations people made to scare each other. But everything changed when she moved into her cousin's old place for a few weeks. The house looked simple from the outside, nothing special. But the moment Ronnie stepped inside, she felt a strange heaviness in the air. It wasn't painful or dangerous, just uncomfortable, like someone was watching her from a corner she couldn't see. Every night she heard light footsteps in the hallway. She tried to ignore it, telling herself it was just the house settling. But one night the footsteps stopped right outside her bedroom door. When she opened the door, there was no one there, only the faint smell of damp wood, like something old had just passed by. On the fifth night, she found a small mirror lying on the floor near her bed. She didn't remember placing it there. The strange part was the reflection. Behind her own face, she could see the shape of another person standing very close. But when she turned around, the room was empty. She tried to calm herself, thinking maybe she was just tired. But deep down, she felt the fear slowly growing, like the house was trying to show her something she wasn't ready to see. The next morning, Ronnie tried to act normal. She cleaned the house, opened all the windows, and tried to let sunlight in. But even with the bright light, the house still felt gloomy, as if something inside refused to leave. In the afternoon, Ronnie decided to call her cousin to ask if anything strange had ever happened there. Her cousin paused for a long moment before answering. Then she said something that made Ronnie's skin feel cold. She said, "If you ever see a mirror on the floor, don't look into it. Just break it, and don't stay close to it. Ronnie froze. Her cousin refused to explain more, only telling her to be careful and never go to the back room near the kitchen. That room, she said, was the oldest part of the house, and it was better to keep it locked. That night, Ronnie couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the mirror. When she finally closed her eyes, she felt a soft breeze brush across her cheek. She opened her eyes slowly and saw another mirror, this time standing upright near the foot of her bed. Inside the mirror, her reflection wasn't moving the same way she was. It tilted its head slightly, almost as if studying her. Then it smiled, even though Ronnie wasn't smiling at all. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, but her voice wouldn't come out. The reflection slowly lifted its hand, pointing toward the back room she was warned not to enter. Ronnie stared at the reflection, unable to look away. The smile on its face stayed the same, calm but wrong. When it pointed again toward the back room, Ronnie felt a pressure in her chest, as if the air around her had suddenly grown heavier. She forced herself to move. She got out of bed, slowly, keeping her eyes on the mirror. Her reflection still didn't copy her movements. It simply watched, waiting. Ronnie stepped back, grabbed a blanket, and covered the mirror completely. Only then did she feel like she could breathe again. But the fear didn't stop. Something inside her kept telling her that if she didn't check the back room, the situation would only get worse. She didn't want to go, but she also didn't want to spend another night with mirrors appearing around her. With her hands shaking, she walked through the dim hallway. The house felt quieter than usual. Too quiet. When she reached the old door near the kitchen, she noticed something new. Scratches around the lock, as if someone had tried to claw their way out, not in. She hesitated, but her hand moved on its own, slowly turning the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a cold, empty room with nothing but dust and old wooden walls. At least that's what she thought at first. In the far corner, a figure stood facing the wall. The figure had the exact same height, hair, and clothes as Ronnie. It looked like her from behind. But it wasn't moving. Ronnie wanted to run, but the figure slowly turned its head, only its head, as if the rest of its body was stuck. Its face was the same as the one in the mirror, calm, smiling, but completely unnatural. It whispered, "You looked. Now let me out." The door slammed shut behind her. I never liked staying alone in my house at night, but that Thursday felt different in a way I can't explain. The air felt heavier, like someone had been waiting for me long before I opened the front door. I tried to ignore the strange feeling, telling myself I was just tired from the long day. After I changed my clothes, I went to the living room to relax for a moment. The room was quiet, too quiet, as if the whole place was holding its breath. I kept glancing at the hallway, even though I didn't know why. It was just a hallway, but it suddenly felt darker than usual, like it was hiding something. I tried to focus on my phone, scrolling through random things, but I kept catching something in the corner of my eye. It was a small movement, very slow, like someone shifting their weight while trying not to be noticed. I looked up, but the hallway was empty. Still, the feeling didn't go away. I stood up and walked closer to the hallway, trying to convince myself everything was normal. The deeper I looked into the darkness, the stronger the feeling became. It felt like someone was standing just out of sight, watching me calmly without any rush to hide. My heart started beating faster, not because I saw something, but because I felt something. A quiet, steady presence, almost like a person who didn't belong there but refused to leave. I wanted to call out, but my voice felt stuck in my throat. Then I noticed something that made me freeze. The door to my bedroom, which I was sure I had left half open, was now completely closed. I stood there for a long moment, trying to understand if I simply remembered it wrong. But deep down I knew I didn't. I never closed that door at night because I didn't like feeling trapped, so seeing it fully shut made my chest tighten. I took a slow step toward the bedroom. The house felt smaller, like the walls were quietly moving in. Every part of me wanted to turn around and walk out, but I also felt pulled forward, like something was silently inviting me to come closer. When I reached the door, I stopped again. The air around it felt colder. I touched the doorknob, and it felt like metal that had been left outside in the rain. I hesitated, wondering if opening it was a terrible idea, but leaving it closed felt worse. I pushed it open just enough to look inside. The room was dim, but I could still see clearly. Nothing looked out of place at first. The bed, the desk, the chair, all exactly where they should be. I felt a small wave of relief until my eyes moved to the corner of the room. The chair that usually faced my desk was turned toward the door, as if someone had been sitting there and watching the entrance. I didn't remember touching it. I didn't remember moving anything at all. I whispered a soft question into the room, asking if anyone was there, but the silence that answered felt too heavy to be normal. It felt like the room was refusing to give me a clear answer. Just as I was about to step back, something shifted. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. The chair, very slowly, turned a few inches more toward me. Even though nothing was touching it, my hands started shaking. I stepped away quickly, but before I could leave the room, I noticed something else. On the bed, right on top of the neatly arranged blanket, was a single handprint. It was faint, but fresh enough to see clearly, and it wasn't mine. I backed away from the bed, keeping my eyes on the handprint as if it might move again. My mind tried to make sense of it, but nothing felt logical anymore. The room didn't feel like my room. It felt like someone else had claimed part of it, without asking. I stepped into the hallway, wanting to get as far from the bedroom as possible, but the moment I turned around, I felt that same presence again, closer, this time, almost breathing against the back of my neck. I didn't dare look. I just kept walking toward the living room, telling myself to stay calm, even though my hands were cold and my legs felt weak. When I reached the living room, the lights flickered softly. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make me lose a bit more confidence. I moved to the sofa, thinking maybe if I sat down the feeling would fade. It didn't. Instead, it grew sharper, like someone was standing behind me, watching with quiet patience. I turned my head slowly, trying to check without making it obvious. And that's when I saw it. Not a full shape, not a clear figure, but a shadow on the wall that didn't match anything in the room. It was taller than me, and it leaned slightly, as if listening. I froze. The shadow didn't move, but it didn't feel still either. It felt aware. I whispered, asking what it wanted, even though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The air felt heavier after I spoke, like the whole room had been waiting for that exact moment. The shadow stretched, not toward the wall, but toward me. Slowly, inch by inch, I stood up ready to run, but my feet refused to move. The shadow kept reaching, long and steady, until its shape touched mine. It didn't hurt. It didn't grab. It just pressed against me, cold and quiet, as if trying to merge with my own outline. And then, as suddenly as it came, it slipped away, leaving the room empty but not peaceful. I realized something important in that moment. Whatever had been in the house that night wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to learn me, trying to copy me, trying to become me. And when I turned to the hallway again, I saw my own silhouette standing at the end of it. But it wasn't me. It smiled without moving its mouth. I still remember the first night it happened. It was a normal evening, nothing special. I had just finished cleaning my small room and sat on the edge of my bed, trying to relax after a long day. The only light came from my desk lamp, and everything felt quiet, in a way that didn't feel peaceful, but a little too empty. While scrolling through my phone, I noticed a message request from an account I didn't recognize. The profile picture was completely black, and the name was just a simple word, Imidiating. I thought it was some spam account, so I ignored it. But then the message notification appeared again, and again. One message every few seconds, like the person knew I was online and waiting for me to react. I finally opened it. The first message said, "I can see your room." My heart felt tight for a moment. I looked around, trying to convince myself it was just someone kidding. My curtains were closed, my door was locked. There was no way anyone could see me. I put my phone face down and tried to distract myself, but the messages kept coming nonstop. "Why did you turn away?" You look different when you're worried. Don't hide. I didn't answer any of them, but something inside me said I should not block the account either. I felt like if I did, something worse would happen. It was a strange fear, the kind that makes your body cold, but you don't know why. Then one more message appeared. A photo. It was my room, taken from behind me. But I was home alone. Before I could even breathe, another message came. I'm just getting started. I didn't know what to do after seeing that photo. I wanted to run outside, but something in me froze. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. I kept looking at the picture, trying to find a reflection or a shadow that could explain it, but there was nothing. It looked exactly like my room at that moment, with me sitting on the bed. I forced myself to stand up and check every corner of the room. Under the bed, inside the closet, behind the curtains, nothing. The air felt heavy, though, like the room wasn't mine anymore. Like someone else had already claimed it. My phone vibrated again. You're looking in the wrong places. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't even want to turn around. Slowly, I looked up at the ceiling, then at the walls. Everything looked normal, but the fear kept telling me something was very wrong. Another message appeared. I like your fear. It makes you easier to copy. This time I replied. My fingers were stiff as I typed. Who are you? The answer came instantly, as if the person was sitting right beside me. Not who. What? I didn't understand, and I didn't want to. I walked out of my room and sat in the living room, leaving all the lights on. I hugged myself, trying to calm down. I even thought about calling someone, but I was scared they wouldn't believe me. Then my phone buzzed again. If you step back into your room, you will see me. I already learned enough to look like you. For a moment, my whole body felt numb. I slowly turned my head toward the hallway that led to my room. The door was still open, but the inside looked darker than before. Not like normal darkness, but like something was waiting inside. I took a deep breath, trying to think clearly, but deep inside I knew something terrifying was now inside my room. Something that wanted to become me. I stood there, staring at the open door of my room. A part of me wanted to run outside and never come back, but another part felt pulled toward the darkness inside. It wasn't curiosity. It felt more like something inside the room wanted me to return, and my own fear was pushing me closer. My phone vibrated again. I looked down. Come see your new self. I didn't move. Then another message arrived. If you don't come, I'll come to you. That made my legs weak. I knew I had to end this, or at least try. I took a step toward the room. The lights in the hallway seemed a bit dimmer than usual, like they were being swallowed by something. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. The air felt colder. My bed, my desk, everything was still there. But the atmosphere felt wrong, as if the room was holding its breath. Then I saw it. Someone was sitting on my bed, someone with my hair, my clothes, my posture. But the skin was too pale. The smile was too wide, and the eyes were open, staring straight at me without blinking. My phone buzzed one more time. Told you, I can copy anything you fear. The thing on the bed slowly turned its head to match the angle of mine, like it was practicing being me. Its smile didn't move. Its eyes didn't blink. It just kept watching, as if waiting for me to step inside so it could finish whatever it started. I backed away, slowly. But before I turned around, the fake version of me stood up. The movement was too smooth, almost floating. I didn't wait to see anything else. I ran out of the apartment without even closing the door, without my shoes, without thinking. I never went back. But sometimes late at night, I still get messages. Every one of them comes from the same account. Every message says the same thing. You left too early. I'm ready to replace you now. And the profile picture. It's no longer black. It's my face. I want to start this story by telling you something that might sound a little strange, but I promise it's true. There are some people who say a fear begins from things we can see. But the real fear, the one that stays in our mind, actually comes from things we try to ignore. This story happened to me when I moved into a small rented room behind an old house. The owner was an older woman who lived alone. She spoke kindly, but her eyes always looked tired, like she hadn't slept for months. On the first night, she reminded me not to open the door beside the kitchen. She said it calmly, like it was something normal. I didn't ask why. I just nodded. The room itself was quiet. Maybe too quiet. The air always felt colder near the kitchen area, even during hot days. Every time I walked past that forbidden door, I felt something like a gentle pressure on my back, as if something inside the room wanted to come closer. A few days later, I started hearing light movement at night. Not loud, not aggressive, just the kind of movement that makes you unsure if it's real. Like someone slowly shifting their weight on the floor, or someone standing just outside my room, waiting for me to speak first. I tried to ignore it, but every night it felt a bit closer. And every morning the older woman would quietly ask, "Did you sleep well?" She never asked anything else. And I never said the truth. One night I woke up because I felt like someone was watching me. My room was dark, but not the usual dark. This time it felt heavy. I couldn't hear anything, but the silence felt too aware, like it was paying attention to my breathing. Then I smelled something faint, like old dust that hadn't moved in years. The smell came from the direction of the kitchen, from behind the forbidden door. I knew something was wrong when I saw the thin line of light under that door. The older woman had told me clearly that the room would always stay locked, so why was there light inside? And why did it look like something was slowly blocking the light from the inside? I stared at that thin line of light, hoping my eyes were just tired. But the shadow behind the door kept moving, slowly, like someone was walking back and forth in a very small space. I felt my heartbeat rising, but I tried to calm myself. Maybe the owner forgot to mention someone else lived there. Maybe it was nothing, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't nothing. The next morning, I asked the older woman if anyone else used that room. Her face turned pale the second I mentioned it. She gently shook her head and whispered, "Please don't talk about that room. Just pretend you never saw anything." That answer made everything worse. People only say that when they're hiding something bigger than their fear. That night I tried to sleep earlier, hoping I could avoid hearing anything. But around midnight I woke up again. This time, not because of a sound. It was because my door was slightly open. I was sure I had locked it. I didn't hear footsteps, no breathing, nothing. But the empty space beside my bed felt wrong, like the air was heavier there. I sat up and looked around slowly. The room was the same, except for one thing. On the floor, just inside my door, someone had left a small piece of torn paper. I picked it up with shaking hands. There was only one short sentence, written in messy handwriting, "Do not ignore me." My whole body froze. I didn't know whose handwriting it was. I didn't know how the paper got inside my locked room, but I knew exactly where it came from, the forbidden door. That night I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I tried, I imagined the shadow behind that door standing in front of mine, waiting for me to finally open it. Around 3 in the morning, I heard a soft tap from the kitchen. One single tap, then another, and another, each one slower than the last, like someone gently knocking but unsure if they should continue. I lay still, holding my breath, praying the sound would stop. But then the tapping suddenly stopped, and something even worse happened. The light under the forbidden door turned on again, but this time, the shadow wasn't moving. This time, the shadow was standing completely still, facing the door, like it was waiting for me. I stared at the shadow from across the hallway, unable to move. It didn't shift, it didn't pace, it just stood there, silent, like it knew I was watching it. The light inside the room made its shape look long and thin, almost like a person who had forgotten how to stand naturally. I wanted to run, but my legs felt too weak. My breathing grew shallow as a cold feeling spread across my back. I kept telling myself not to look away, like if I blinked, the shadow would suddenly appear behind me. Minutes passed, but it never moved. Finally, I gathered enough courage to step closer. I wasn't planning to open the door. I only wanted to confirm if what I saw was real or just my imagination. When I reached the kitchen, the air felt colder, so cold it made my hands shake. And then, the light inside the forbidden room suddenly turned off. The shadow disappeared. I froze in place. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear the door open, but the feeling that someone was standing right behind that wooden door became so strong it felt almost physical. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off the door. I went back to my room, locked myself inside, and sat on the edge of my bed until the sun rose. In the morning, I decided to pack my things and leave. When the older woman saw me dragging my bag, she didn't look surprised. She just stared at me with tired eyes and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to know more. Before I stepped out of the house for the final time, she quietly said something that still bothers me until now. "Whatever you saw in that room, it only shows itself to people who already have something following them." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't dare. But ever since I left that house, I keep noticing small things around me. My bedroom door sometimes shifts slightly at night. I find pieces of torn paper near my window, and sometimes when I'm alone in a quiet place, I feel a presence standing just behind me, waiting for me to turn around. I never do, because deep down I know exactly what I'll see. I still remember the night everything changed. It started quietly, almost too normal. I had just moved into a small rented house near the edge of the town. The landlord said the area was calm, safe, and perfect for someone who just wanted peace. At first, I believed him. On my second night, I noticed something strange. Every time I passed by the living room window, I felt like someone was standing outside, watching. But whenever I looked, there was nothing there, just the empty yard and the old wooden fence that looked like it could collapse at any time. I kept telling myself it was only my imagination. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I just needed more time to get used to the new place. But what happened on the third night made me realize it wasn't just in my head. Around midnight, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The house felt colder than usual, even though all the windows were closed. As I walked back to my room, I passed the hallway mirror. I didn't plan to look into it, but something made me stop. There was a reflection of a figure standing behind me. It wasn't moving, it wasn't blurred. It looked like a tall person with a thin body, wearing something dark. I froze. My heart was beating fast, and I couldn't breathe for a moment. I quickly turned around, expecting someone to be there. But the hallway was empty, quiet, and still. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. In that moment, I felt a fear I had never felt before. Not the kind of fear you feel when you watch a horror movie. This one felt real, like something had entered my life without asking and wasn't planning to leave. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat on my bed, waiting, listening, hoping the house would stay silent. But deep down, I knew the silence wouldn't last. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I opened the curtains, made breakfast, and even played some music to distract myself. But no matter what I did, the memory of the figure in the mirror stayed in my mind. It felt like it was still somewhere inside the house, hiding, waiting for the right moment to show itself again. Throughout the day, I kept noticing small changes. My bedroom door, which I always left open, was suddenly half closed. The bathroom light, which I was sure I turned off, was on. Even the glass I left on the table had moved a little. I tried to explain everything logically, but the more I tried, the more my explanations didn't make sense. That night, things got worse. I was brushing my teeth when I heard footsteps in the living room, slow, steady, and heavy. I thought maybe someone had broken in, so I grabbed the closest thing I could use to defend myself, a wooden hanger from the bathroom. I walked out of the bathroom slowly, trying not to make any noise. The living room was dark, but I could still see the outline of the furniture. I didn't hear anything for a few seconds. Then the footsteps started again, but this time, they came from behind me. I turned around quickly, but again, there was nothing, just the hallway leading to the mirror. The air grew colder. My hands were shaking. I tried to speak, just to make myself feel brave, but my voice didn't come out. As I stepped back, I suddenly noticed something on the mirror. A handprint. It looked fresh, like someone had just touched it a few seconds before I arrived. But the worst part was the shape. It wasn't normal. The fingers were too long, and the palm was too narrow, as if it didn't belong to a human. I felt a strong urge to leave the house, but before I could move, I heard a whisper coming from the end of the hallway. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear, but it was enough to make every part of my body freeze. Someone, or something, was trying to speak to me. I didn't wait to hear any more. I ran into my room, locked the door, and pushed a chair against it. I sat down on the floor, trying to calm myself, but my heartbeat kept getting faster. Then I heard a soft, slow tapping on my door. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I just sat there, hoping morning would come soon. Morning finally came, but the light didn't make me feel safe anymore. I packed my bag, ready to leave the house for good. I didn't care about the rent I had already paid. I didn't care about the landlord's reaction. I just wanted to get out. But before leaving, I had to pass the hallway one last time. The mirror was still there, standing quietly like nothing had happened. The handprint from last night was gone, as if it had never existed. For a moment, I wondered if everything was just a long, frightening dream. I was about to turn away when I noticed something on the floor, an envelope. It was placed neatly right in front of the mirror. My name was written on it in plain handwriting. I didn't want to touch it, but curiosity forced me to pick it up. Inside the envelope was a single piece of paper. No message, no explanation. Just a drawing. It was a simple sketch of a hallway. My hallway, and at the end of it stood the same tall, thin figure I had seen in the mirror. But this time, the sketch showed something else. The figure wasn't just standing. It was reaching toward the person holding the paper. I dropped the drawing immediately. My whole body felt cold, and for a moment I couldn't move. I didn't understand how the drawing appeared in my house. I didn't understand how it knew my name. But I knew one thing clearly. I wasn't alone in that house, and I never had been. I rushed to the front door, but when I tried to turn the knob, it didn't move. I pulled harder, but it felt locked from the outside. Panic started to rise in my chest. I tried the back door, the windows, everything. All of them were stuck. Then I heard it. The same slow footsteps from last night, but now they were clearer, closer, and moving steadily toward me from the hallway. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't. Stop myself! I turned my head slowly toward the mirror. The figure was there again. But this time, it wasn't in the reflection. It was standing behind the mirror, pressing its long, thin hands against the glass as if trying to push through. Cracks began to form across the surface. Tiny lines at first, then bigger ones. The glass looked like it was going to break any second. I stepped back, my heart racing like it was trying to escape my chest. Then slowly, the figure lifted its head. I didn't see its eyes. I didn't see its face. But I felt its attention on me. Cold, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The mirror cracked again. Louder this time. A small piece of glass fell to the floor, and just before the rest of the mirror shattered completely. I realized something terrifying. The figure had never been trying to scare me. It had been trying to enter my world. I don't know what happened after that. Everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was already outside the house with no memory of how I got there. The house is still standing, but I never went back. Sometimes at night, I still feel like someone is watching me. And every time I pass a mirror, I look as little as possible. Because I'm scared that one day I'll see those long hands again, not behind me, but reaching out from the other side.